Serious, what was the closest you've ever been to killing someone? When my daughter was 7 weeks old, I was going out to the coffee shop around the block from my house. It was a rainy day, but I'd stopped briefly. I put her in my Moby wrap and went out. I went and got coffee and a sandwich. On my way back home, I went to step up onto the sidewalk. Instead, my toe clipped the curb. I fell forward. My daughter was thrown out of the wrap and onto the sidewalk. Luckily, I was closer to the ground as I was falling as well, and the fall wasn't as far as it could have been. She began to cry immediately, and all I could do was sit on the wet sidewalk, rocking back and forth crying, as a woman was standing next to me saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God." I didn't have my cell phone with me, I was just running out. A kind gentleman let me use his and I called my husband, who was working around the block. He was there in seconds. We went to the emergency room. Got lots of tests done. Watched as my 7-week-old daughter was placed in a CT scan. I felt so helpless. She was completely fine. It was the worst day of my life. I can still close my eyes and see her falling to the ground. Although this experience was terrifying, it taught me some important lessons. Kids are resilient. If they cry immediately, they're probably okay. If they move immediately, they're probably okay. You're gonna F things up as a parent, so be easy on yourself. I operate heavy equipment dozer excavators. These things weigh over 30 tons on the light side for perspective. Anyways, we had just started a brine pond project and had just hired some new laborers. They were as green as they come, lol. Anyways, I used my two-way radio to ask them to come over to where I was to tear down a set or barricade so I could proceed. One of the laborers literally ran right up beside my machine without making direct eye contact or radio contact. Industry standard is to do so I can safe out the machine. I was backing up at the time, so I was watching behind my machine. When I turned around to go forward, the laborer literally 2 inches from my tracks. Needless to say, I've never pressed the engine decal pedal as fast as I did in that situation. If I was new to the machine or inexperienced, the guy would have been an empty toothpaste roll on the ground. Had an abusive stepfather when I was a kid. A bit pedo creepy, would do things like accidentally let his robe gap open with no underwear on. Would start tickle fights as an excuse to get gropey, that sort of thing. That was nothing next to the beatings, gaslighting, manipulation and other varieties of psychological and physical torture. I hated him more than I've ever hated anyone in my life, and one night I decided to try to make rat poison tea. Turns out the rat poison we had wouldn't dissolve in the tea. It's for the best. He's still an asshole, but at least I'm not a murderer. Edit, because apparently some folks in the comments thought I was looking for advice on how to kill people or seriously injure them. Stop it, please. I'm not that kid anymore. I don't regret failing to make poison tea. I don't want to hurt anyone, and no one should be committing murder to solve their problems. Have a nice day. I had a girl that bullied me daily in the 9th grade. She told me to kill myself almost every day and that I was worthless. She threatened to beat me up, and even threatened that she would kill me. I went to the counselor and she said it was nothing and I should just ignore it. No one wanted to help me. There was one day she cornered me on the stairs. There were multiple stories and I was on my way to class. She was standing next to the railing, yelling at me, telling me how worthless I was and I should just jump off the roof to save everyone the annoyance of knowing me. For a split second I considered pushing her over the railing. We were on the 3rd floor, so I don't know if she would have died or just been severely injured. Regardless, I considered it for 1.5 seconds before I snapped back into reality and just took off down the stairs. I've never been a violent person with violent thoughts, but if she had gotten physical with me, I don't know what I would have done. I was 13 at the time and I'm 25 now. I still remember it sometimes and shudder. I've never had a thought like that since. When I was like 14 or so, I was on a swing at a park. I was going about as high and fast as that swing could possibly go. A kid who couldn't be older than 2 wandered directly in front of me as I was coming down. I slammed my feet on the ground and stopped myself about an inch away from her. My hands started to bleed from the chain, but at least I didn't drop kick a 2-year-old all the way across the park. The mother saw the thing happen, but she was too far away from us to do anything in the moment, but she ran over crying and thanking me for stopping. Drunk student fell into the road in front of me. I swerved and rode off 2 cars and injured my passenger. I was fine. He didn't even hang around to thank me, little wanker. Edit, the amount of edgy goons who try and make compelling arguments that I should have killed him is disgusting. I'm very happy with how things turned out, and as stated many times, it was literally the most legal and safe thing I could have done, as was decided in court. Some of you are literally brainwashed to think that your personal property is worth more than a young human life, and that's honestly disturbing as fuck. I'm glad I grew up where I did and was taught the morals I was, because the world scares the fuck out of me if you think I should have killed some poor drunk kid in order to save some low-level criminal's new car. I had started a grease fire in a pot on the stove while cooking for a date. Panic set in as it was kind of big fire. Only thing I could think of was baking soda would be the only thing to put it out because that's what they taught us in school, right? Ransacked my cupboards, couldn't find it. Next best thing that came to mind? Dirt from outside. Ran outside to get some dirt, told her not to pour water on it, that I'll be right back. As I'm out there I hear her scream and a flash of orange. My heart sank and I froze for a second. Did I just kill my date? Back inside, she's fine, fire is smaller but still going, my walls and ceiling are scorched. I ask her what happened? She replied, she poured milk on the fire because milk is thicker than water. Okay. Anyway, no one was harmed in all this, thankfully. Except my bank account when my security deposit didn't cover the damages done when I moved out later. Oh well. I do have more fire stories from that apartment. Pretty sure my landlord thought I was an arsonist. Or a dumb kid on his first time living alone, pretending to be an adult. My roommate wanted to rearrange the dorm room in college. We had bunk beds. I said we need to break down the top bunk into pieces, take the mattress off, then the bottom spring bit, etc. She said no, we got this, we can just pick it up as a whole unit. I told her I do not possess enough strength to that. She told me it would be fine. So we lift this bed whole, straight off the bottom bed pegs. The height difference between us is over a foot. So I kinda dropped it trying to even it out with her end. And shock of all shocks, it ended up falling. She was backed against a windowsill. She tripped and fell back and her head caught the windowsill and the bed came down on her. One of the legs caught the sill and her head ended up being trapped between the bottom rung of the bed ladder and the sill. We had to yell and get some help. If that leg wouldn't have caught the windowsill, she would have had the whole weight of the bed come down on her exposed neck. Breaking her neck, probably crushing her throat and who knows what else. Honestly, she was literal inches from death. We had to pause and just let that sink in for the rest of the night. The bed still got moved though. Mom was in an abusive relationship for about 8 years. About 6 years into it, me and my ex stopped by to pick Mom up as she said the guy was drunk and she wanted to leave. We arrive and as I approach the front steps I look up into the glass door and see a pair of hands shove my mother out of view. She went fucking flying. I raged out, grabbed an axe that was nearby. Dude would chop trees on property and sell bundled firewood, as the guy stepped out front and downstairs. I chased him around the perimeter of the property whilst almost blacked out in anger. A buddy of his who was staying there temporarily was on the side of the house smoking a cigarette and tackled me. Luckily, the axe didn't penetrate my chest, seeing as I landed face down with the axe pinned against me. Could have been all types of messy in 2 ways. Fast forward about 2 years and abusive guy gets into car wreck and passes away about 2 months after I got into car wreck on same street in a similar truck and walked away with cuts and bruises. I was a little kid and my cousins and siblings, all a few years younger, were in the bathtub and I used the hair dryer to dry my hair, well, obviously. Then I wanted to make waves for them so I held the hair dryer very close to the water. My mother and aunt lost it, will always remember this, how they, for obvious reasons, yelled at me for hours. Never got anything electric close to water again. Edit. Whoa, thanks for the upvotes. Also, when it is a dumb story and very lucky that nobody happened anything. Please tell your children early enough how dangerous electricity and water are. Grandma got moved to a real shady nursing home. Her concierge doctor, who she paid $3 grand a year to specifically stay a patient of, refused to go anywhere except this one nursing home. It was an old piece of shit. First day go to visit her and she is covered in shit and piss. Not one person came to check on her or answered her buzzers. They dropped her day 2 and she had to go to hospital. Go to a room to pick up stuff and found a nurse in her chair eating all her food. Day later family was visiting and said her TV was missing and they replaced it with some ghetto small one. I rushed right over, and I was like, if they robbed her on top of this, I'm going to kill these goddamn nurses. Turns out the TV was fine and people were just hyped up and over suspicious. The bad nurses did get fired and grandma had an okay time there. I mean, it's a nursing home, they are all pretty much shit. My older brother, it was after my mother had passed away. I was working 3 jobs so that my older brother and 2 younger brothers could carry on studying and make something of themselves. 4 years in I find out instead of him paying the bills, I was giving him more than enough for all the bills. With the money I was giving him it was not enough. He was taking out the apartment on my name. Turned out after 4 years of working 3 jobs non-stop I was in about $100K department with no money left in my bank account. The only reason he did not die that day was too many people got in the way. I didn't want to hurt anyone other than that trash of a shit. My mum was dying in hospice. It was undignified and she was in a lot of pain, but she was still lucid. I asked her if she wanted me to help her speed things up. For context, she was a nurse before she got sick and I knew what I could do to make things happen. She told me she wished I could, but didn't want me to get in trouble or go to jail. We laughed about it a little bit. I maintained I would have a ball in jail. She died later that week. I spent most of it by her side. I am 100% pro-assisted euthanasia. Watching her go was torturous. Let me just start by saying my dad was extremely abusive. Mentally, physically and emotionally. He beat on my mother and I quite a bit. He also hunted a lot, deer mostly, and it was a big tradition in our family for the uncles and cousins to all go together. My grandmother, Mom's mom, pulled me aside the day before opening day, and told me she would buy me a car. I was 15, almost 16 at the time, if I shot my dad out in the woods. She told me no one would ever know, and she would get me the best lawyer money could buy if it came to that. I agreed. To this day, I wish I would have pulled the trigger. I was too scared and my conscience got the best of me. I know I would have gotten away with it, and it would have saved my family so much trouble down the road. He's dead now, but I wish I could have been the one to do it. Working at a fast food shop, my friend who was very allergic to peanuts asked for our shop's version of the Blizzard. I joked, "You want that with peanut butter cup, right?" Haha, we both chuckled. He said no and asked for cookie dough. For some unspeakable reason, no a single clue why, I made it with cookie dough and peanut butter cups. Handed it to him without a second thought. He brought it back like a minute later and said he thinks he saw peanut butter cup in it, and sure enough, my dumb teenage ass put this man's literal death poison in his ice cream. I apologized 100 times, he said it wasn't a big deal. I lived with that anxiety-causing thought for a while. Velp, this is the most karma I've ever gotten. What do I do with my hands at this point?